But yeah, I let the guy die. Sorry, mate.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. My name is Liam. As always, we're joined with Jack.
How's it going?
And this is going to be the finale of our Detroit Become Human chapter. So Jack finished the game. We will put a disclaimer in to say that this was a while back, probably 2 months, because of time constraints of the trip. I'm now back home in front of my actual PC, so Jack and I are no longer in the same room. We basically finished the gameplay, went to bed, and I had to get a morning train. So, it's been quite a while, so our memory might be a little foggy. A lot's changed between now and then. But we're going to crack on nonetheless. And yeah, let's get stuck in with the episode. Right, Jack. So we left it at the Freedom March last time.
Yeah.
So Marcus got away at his plot armor's worn off now. So Marcus can officially die at any point now. Yeah. So I mean, it goes straight into the police station, Jack, where you've got to retrieve evidence because you got kicked off the case, didn't you? I don't know if you remember that scene, mate.
Yeah. So you go and talk to Fowler, don't you? Like yourself and Hank, and he says that the FBI are taking over the case. And then when you leave his office, I'm pretty sure Connor goes up to Hank and he says, "I know how to stop the deviants." And then that's when Hank gives you the little nod and says, "The key's on my desk. If you want to go down and check the evidence." But I suppose this is where it becomes patchy for me because I don't remember specifically what evidence that I found, because I know that there was a couple of moments earlier in the game where I actually failed, didn't I? Like the Eden room bit, and when I ultimately saved Hank on the roof instead of going after the deviant that we was chasing. So there's actually a couple of bits here that are going to be a little bit foggy, as you said before, but yeah, it's in essence, it's just to find the location of Jericho, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, it's really interesting you got the scene. I did myself as well because I chose a load of sympathetic options and I spared Chloe. You killed Chloe but asked about RA9, not the location of Jericho. So you had to go down and kind of, do some detective work. And it's really interesting because based off of your whole Connor playthrough, you'll get all these pieces of evidence based off of what you did. So you might have the Tracy girls from the Eden Club if you got them. You might have Rupert if you chased him and he jumped. You might have the android who self-destructed. So yeah, there's a variety of ways. I absolutely love this chapter. There's so many ways you can break out the location of Jericho. For example, if you have the lesbian lovers at the Eden Club, you can actually grab one of their heads, put it in front of the other one, and fool them into sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I'm alive, tell me where Jericho is," and you can trick them. There's loads of different ways of doing it. I think there's over 8 or 10. And the way you did it is you found the relevant parts, and I think you probed the Stratford guard, I believe. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, yeah. I do remember that.
So yeah, there's a few interesting ways, and I think you also broke the statue, so you found the note in there, which also helped you. But yeah, no, super interesting how varied this little section is. And of course, you've had Gavin that's been giving you a tough time throughout this chapter, and you had a one-on-one fight with him. And it's interesting because, Gavin can actually win the fight and kill Connor here. But Jack, you came out on top there and kicked Gavin's ass, and I think that's the last we see of him, so I'm pretty sure you'll be grateful to see this Gavin character out of your game, mate.
Indeed, yeah, because I'm pretty sure earlier on he was giving me some stick and I was trying to remain neutral and not rise to it, and he ended up punching me in the stomach. So yeah, I had to get my own back. I had to sort Gavin out. But yeah, that's it. That's the end of Gavin.
Not to be nitpicky, but I'm going to go ahead for the record and say I don't think I liked Gavin as a character. I think if we look at Heavy Rain, he is just a carbon copy of Blake that gives Norman Jayden a hard time. The only difference being FBI versus police. It switches the perspectives. I think it's just very much a copy and paste job. We get another asshole cop partner who's just in the room, and I get it blends in with the theme that androids aren't respected and Connor's supposed to get a tough time throughout. and it contrasts nicely from Hank, who becomes more respectful. But I think I would have actually liked kind of a layer of humanity in Gavin. Like maybe he gets a nice story arc at the end, or maybe he can help Connor in one ending. I don't know, but unpopular opinion, I don't like the way Gavin was handled, and I just wish he was a little less one-dimensional. Don't know if you agree with that, mate.
Yeah, I mean, no, you've got a point, because you think if Gavin was taken out of the game, would anything change? Even if he stayed like two-dimensional, like you say, but he somehow fobbed Connor in, you know, maybe like it was somehow on the boat scene, or do you know what I mean? Maybe he did something to make us hate him even more. As you say, maybe he could have had like a redemptive arc. But yeah, if you took him out of this game, it wouldn't necessarily change anything. So he is one of those filler characters, I'd say.
Yeah, so Connor's got the Jericho location. So we go over to Jericho and we play as Kara now. And so Rose says bye to you. And this is the interesting chapter, isn't it? Where all the characters link up, because Kara's going around Jericho to find Marcus. They have a little conversation. Connor can even go around, and you can sort of see Alice and Luther in the background as you're playing as Connor. And it's like the first time our three protagonists are literally in the same room. I mean, what did you think of this whole section, mate, if you remember it?
Well, I mean, I do remember it well. And what I'm going to say here sort of justifies what happens later on. But I put a lot of energy into this chapter, into like this whole boat scene, because I feel like when all three characters were coming together into one location, I genuinely thought that this was going to be the end game, this boat sequence. And it's probably something I'm going to say in this final episode quite a lot, that I found there was a lot of what I'd call false endings in this game, and I feel like this boat scene is definitely one of them. But you know, we'll get to that when we do. But of course, I just thought it was really cool. Like, obviously, you start off as Kara, and you've got to find a warm place for her, haven't you? But then you quickly like switch over to Connor, who's on her tail, who's actually looking for Kara. Am I right? He's looking for her model, or is he there to get Marcus? I can't quite remember.
I believe he is there to find Marcus, the leader of Jericho.
Oh, right, okay. But yeah, like, it reminded me something if you said that the whole cat and mouse dynamic. I mean, I've not played Fahrenheit, but you said about how, you know, you can play as the murderer, and then obviously there's the cop, and you've got like the different angles, and then, you know, like, so that the fact that there was that little nod there again, where you can play as Kara and Connor, like in a very, you know, in the same environment, I thought it was a really nice touch. And then I guess, I don't know, like the atmosphere itself was really cool. And then like Luther just drops this like sort of bombshell on you, doesn't he? Sort of like, you know, in referring to what he was saying earlier, was like, have you noticed anything about Alice? And I did make a prediction, didn't I, mate? I said, oh, you know, is it that she's an android or something? Obviously, there's this scene where you, like, is it that her hair moves or something, and you can then see the little circle on her head to signify that she's an android, or
yeah, or that you see a duplicate Alice. There's another Alice on board, and you're like, wait, what? There's two Alices?
Yeah, that's it. So like, I don't know, like I'm still trying to almost piece together why that became a thing. I suppose it, in terms of Todd's story, and I'm glad, like, we'll cover that bit later on, but you know, Todd didn't have a biologically human daughter. Like, she was an android as well, and he had an android maid, because isn't it that his wife and obviously child obviously left him at some point?
Yeah, so what I think happened is that Todd's, you know, his wife's walked out on him and taken the real kid as well. So I think he's filling the void by having like an android kid. Because there's that magazine, I think, a Vision or a Flashback, and it's like the perfect child. So he's clearly bought like a robot daughter to fill the void, and you know, he's taken it out on a robot daughter basically. And it's really interesting, and I think it kind of warrants a separate video. Part of me thinks it was one twist too far. I kind of suspected, even when we watched Westworld, I'm like, right, an android show where they look like humans, someone is going to be a secret android, and I didn't
Yeah.
quite know who it would be. But I don't know if I like the decision that it was Alice. I like the twist that they went for that. But if you look back at some of the scenes, they make them a little questionable, such as Midnight Train, the Pirate Cove, Zlatko, for example. It does leave me with a lot of questions. I remember when you did point it out, like, oh, I wonder if she's an android, and I remember quickly sniping your theories down by saying, well, no, mate, you've just given her a meal. Androids don't eat. And you're like, oh, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no. The thing is like when he asked Kara, Luther, I'm talking about, when he said, "Have you noticed anything?" I was thinking, well, what else could it be in the context of this game? And I was thinking, like, I was thinking, what else could it be? So I was thinking, it's actually kind of obvious thinking about it now in retrospect, but.
I feel the breadcrumbs could have been a lot better. Like, it's just Luther saying, "Oh, have you noticed anything about Alice?" And also some magazine where Alice is in an article, but it's not even a magazine that you can scroll to. It might have been fun if it was one we could have found where it rewards the gamers that picked up the newspapers and scrolled a few pages in to see like an article. But it was none of that. It kind of was sprung a little out of the blue. Maybe I'm set, I kind of gathered it as well, but because Luther was essentially pushing it on me, I feel like it could have been a way better reveal and they could have handled that much better, in my opinion. I mean, while we're on the topic of Alice as an android, bit of an obvious one. Did you accept her, or did you be like, nah, fuck off, mate?
I'm pretty sure I accepted her. I feel like we've come too far now to just bin her. But, I was just thinking, and I think as well, like, a lot of it, I suppose this could be a separate video in itself as well, but I look at, say, Marcus's story, and it's very much a story about the collective, isn't it? It's about an uprising of androids, of an entire species, and that's sort of magnified through Jericho. But I feel like Kara's story, while she does fit into that, it's very much a personalized solo story, and her story being that she's going on this journey from being someone's dog's body, someone's maid, to being a mum, and all of the human emotions that come with that. So I feel like it would be a bit of an odd choice to suddenly then bin Alice. So I feel like naturally, as the player, you are nudged to go to keep her and accept her for what she is.
It's really interesting if you do decide to fob her off, because she walks off and then you have to play that ending as Kara alone, and it's almost like you have to find Alice, or not, or you can actually go out and save yourself. So this actually branches off in so many different directions from this one choice here, which I thought was a really interesting way to kind of, execute this scene. But yeah, we move on to Connor. He's found Marcus, basically. There's this whole scene where Marcus is there with a bomb that North arms you with, that you can take, which you did. You kept it, Jack. And then Connor corners Marcus, and this is the really interesting bit, right? Because I didn't know this was a thing, but in my playthrough, Connor sees Marcus, and Marcus is like, "Oh, you must be Connor, the deviant hunter. You should join us." And it's at this point Connor can become deviant, and I was like, I kind of want Connor to be a good guy, so yeah, I'm going to make Connor a deviant. And I guess I got this option because, I had stuff like the Eden Club, where I spared people, I saved Hank when, on the rooftops, and I spared Chloe as well. Now, I never knew this, but you made me learn something about this game. I guess because obviously, the Eden Club, failed to do the scanning.
Yeah.
The fact that you killed Chloe, and the fact as well, like in previous things, even like with the Zen Garden scene where Amanda was talking to you, do you feel emotions? You said no. When Connor was being asked stuff by Hank on the bridge, you always kept your answers neutral. So you remain very robotic, and I think it's because you were playing very much what Connor would do.
Yeah.
But almost as a result of this, your option to become a deviant was grayed out and you couldn't select it. Now at this 50-50 point, the only thing you could do was remain as a machine. So from this point forward, ladies and gentlemen, Connor in Jack's playthrough, his blind playthrough, is very much with the humans. So he kind of ended up being a bit of a villain, I guess, from this point, which was interesting. It's definitely a unique playthrough. It's one I hadn't seen, so it was really cool for me to kind of, like, witness. But Jack, I mean, tell us your emotions about this whole thing. Are you a bit gutted? Would have you liked to have seen Connor as a deviant?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Had the option been there for Connor and Marcus to join forces, I would have gone through with it. Because, I've said throughout this whole thing, I feel like Connor's story arc was going to be one where he naturally starts to, call it plot armor if you want, he'll start to side with the androids. So I felt it was always going to go in that direction. But it just goes to show the excellence of the choices in this game, because it's been building up clearly to this point, and the choices that I've made got this situation where it was always going to play out one way, where there was always going to become deadly enemies of one another. So it's strange, and you know what? I'll say this now while I'm thinking of it. When I go into play like a supermassive game, my objective is to keep everyone alive. In this game, it was to keep everyone alive. Then when I found myself, I don't know if it's because like I knew that I was ultimately going to play this game once, like I was never going to, replay it again. But there were certain moments in this game, like the Chloe decision, even decisions that I've done in this chapter as well. But I thought, you know what, I'm not going to pick the passive, boring, everyone lives, everyone's nice decision. I wanted to mix it up. I was thinking, this is a video game, I want to have a bit of fun, let's throw a curveball in there. So in reflection, like, yes, I probably would have had them join forces, but in a way I'm glad that didn't happen, because like I say, it then would have fitted into a narrative where all the androids are good, there's no grey area. And I think actually that Connor is that grey area. He's the android that sided with the humans, and I think I'm just quite satisfied with that.
Yeah, of course. No, really good answer. And to be honest, from watching it, it was really interesting for me. Like, I've obviously gone and got the Connor can die at every point, so I've had to go down that nature just so he remains as a machine for trophy purposes, but I hadn't actually quite seen it at this scene. Where you were forced into that, so it was dead interesting, and it made for a really unique ending, to be honest, as you guys will come to see as we talk through the rest of Jack's choices here. I mean, the next thing that happens is it skips back and forth through Kara and Marcus as the ship's getting blown up, as Jericho's location's been discovered, and Marcus and Kara have to get off the ship. Now, it goes back and forth, so I'll try my best to stay on track here. We'll start with Kara. Now, the first thing you did, Jack, was you killed Luther, mate.
Yeah, non-playable character, no dilly-dallying. Savage Jack is back, folks, or should I say Deviant Jack? But yeah, like I literally what I was just talking about. There's certain moments where I'm not going to do the nice thing. There's certain moments where I'm going to be a bit of a dick, basically. And I was thinking, you know what? He's absolutely right. Alice is the priority. So, sorry, Luther. I feel like that it's very much a story about Kara and Alice. He was always sort of like that third wheel, third party guy there. As grateful as I am that he got me out of Zlatko's mansion. But, yeah, I let the guy die. Sorry, mate.
It's interesting, actually. Like, so this is the end of Luther for you, and it was super interesting to see, because I've seen playthroughs where Luther's died back at the midnight train when the cop goes to examine Rose's house, and it's really cool because all Luther's scenes get filled by Lucy instead. So the Oracle lady who examines Marcus, she'll be the one that tells you about Alice being an android, and so that's just a little cool fact that happens if Luther dies early. But yeah, so we won't be having Luther in your chapter going forward. There's the bit where you can open the door for a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
You being you, 50 feet. Guess what Jack's gone and done. So you didn't open the door, Jack. Now tell us why.
I think I was just thinking rather selfishly in this moment. I'll admit it. I was thinking if I open this door and a guard sees it, then sure, I've rescued a stranger that I've known for 2 seconds, but I've then put myself and Alice in danger. So again, I took the sort of the cold decision, and I thought, no, let's just look after number 1 and number 2 here.
I mean, I was overly nice in my playthrough, so I saved Luther at this point. And also, with this door scene, you're probably right to do it because the body does get shot on the way in the room, and you're left with a dead body, and then you have to do another quick time event to kind of get through, and then you have to rely on other androids, shooting down these guards afterwards. But you wouldn't have been able to have saved them anyway. It just would have created another quick time event, which could have got Kara and Alice killed. So yeah, kind of nice. You'll be relieved to know that's what's happened there. And then I guess I'll just we'll go to the ending of Kara's scene. It's when you finally get off the ship, and then the guards see you, and they shot you. And it's interesting here. I don't know if you remember this, Jack, but you actually failed the quick time event as you were running away from the guns, and you were left with the option to play dead, run. And you did play dead. This is what I did in my playthrough. But it was so interesting because you failed an initial quick time event. And this is one thing we have mentioned previously, where the game makes these scenes really tense. And I'm pretty sure you had your heart in your mouth and you were saying, oh no, fuck, I've killed Kara.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the scene too much. But yeah, talk us through this whole Kara playing dead scene, mate.
I do, because that's literally them getting off the boat. And I come back to the point I was saying before, I put a lot of energy into this whole boat scene. Like, I didn't expect there to be more stuff after this boat sequence. So when I could see them outside and running away, and then you have the shot where the guards, they come into view and they're gunning everyone down, failed the QTE. I was thinking, oh, what? But then it literally, it did come up with the choice, like play dead or run. And I was thinking, well, to run, that would be the most stupid thing going. So I didn't do that. And then there was another choice, wasn't there? Like, either not move or you have to reassure Alice. And again, I was thinking, don't move. If I move to reassure Alice or tell her everything's going to be all right, the guy was literally standing right above me, so that would have been a silly thing to do as well. So I hit don't move, and thankfully, they managed to get away. And at this point, I should say, I was thinking, oh my god, I've saved Alice. But more importantly, I've got Kara to the end of the game. That's where my brain was, because I was so certain this boat thing would be the last bit of the game.
I mean, my brother mentioned it perfectly, actually. He said Fahrenheit does the kind of thing where the characters get to the end, one just vanishes, one just becomes irrelevant, and one has a weird ending, and it kind of ruins the game. But with this one, they come together, they get their joint scene, but then they all go away and they all have their separate conclusions, and I actually really like that. Some people might argue it kind of prolongs the game, it fizzles out a little too long, but I really enjoyed it personally. One thing I also want to mention about these whole soldiers raiding the ship is I really like the literature touch that the humans, the soldiers that are gunning you all down, they're all wearing these helmets, these masks, so you can't see their face. While all the androids, they're all sort of more naked, they've got their face revealed, and it kind of poses that question, who are the real humans here, and I just really like that. I don't know if you thought the same.
There's an irony there, isn't there? Because
it really is.
The humans are all dressed up to look like robots, and the robots look like humans. So I reckon that was an intentional move. And again, it's because we play as 3 androids this whole game, so naturally you've got a bias towards the androids anyway. I think little decisions like that almost heighten that, and I think that it makes the player far more willing to aid the android cause than the human one.
With Marcus's scenes, so he's going through and he does the thing where you decided to blow up Jericho. So while you're doing that, you can go ahead and save humans and stuff, and no, save humans, save some androids along the way. Lucy died for you, so yeah, you weren't able to save her. You did manage to save Josh though, so that's something you did. So Jack does have a heart, guys.
But I did kill North, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. So yeah, like they're like, come on, Marcus, and it's really interesting because for me at this scene, Connor's with them, so Connor can you know, like be involved in this scene running away as well. So you know, I thought that was really interesting. You had another fight scene with Connor, which was interesting, and Marcus got the upper hand on this one, and it won't be their final fight, so it'll be interesting to see how that one went. But then Jericho ended up with a bang. So yeah, what were your feelings about this whole Marcus scene, mate?
Really cool. Some of the QTE moments in there were really good, and again, I just have to echo stuff I've said in previous chapters. The sense of jeopardy. You know, that's another thing as well. Like maybe on some sort of unconscious level, I wanted to do the wrong things because the moments that I enjoyed this game the most, when the moments when there's real jeopardy. You know, I think back to the fight with Todd. I think back to when you're escaping Zlatko. Think back to like the, you know, like the various chase sequences. You know, when you feel like someone could die, that's when you're like actively engaged and like, you know, it's really important to you. So, you know, I chose to blow up the ship, and I was thinking at the time, well, they've all got on the ship. He does actually tap in, doesn't he? I think he like communicates with all the other members of Jericho and the androids and says, you know, get off the ship. You know, they're starting to come on board. So if you blow up the ship and you've got all the humans on board and everyone else has escaped, then that's a winner for Jericho. So that's my thinking there. As far as, because when I was doing my like refresh on this, I did see moments where like Connor was then working alongside you, and it was pretty cool. I do find it a little bit BS from what I did see. There's moments, was it when you go to save North? That yeah, like the way, this is the thing, the way they present it, you can see the enemies down the corridor. If you go to rescue her, in my head, that's just, you know, a few shots fired, you're dead. So you're thinking, no one's, you know, what was the point, sort of thing. But then obviously you then choose to save her and you pick something up and bullets ricochet, and I'm like, oh, you know, I mean, it's, you know, you forgive it, it's a video game, but like if you're being ultra nitpicky, you're like, oh, come on, like that wouldn't have gone down in real life. But nonetheless, a great scene. There was the score was superb. It made me think back, like, I think it was like string instruments, and it was really fast, and there was like shaky cam, and you know, you're running through the boat, and it made me think, like, to what you said before, like that they only got Detroit artists to do the music in this game. I was like, this is fantastic. Like, this sounds like this could be from like a, you know, proper orchestra sort of thing. So it is a really good scene, and like I say, I thought it was the end game.
We'll move on to after Jericho, so we'll wrap it up with a few Marcus scenes here. Just before they had a final conclusion and a little bit of a breather after the Jericho escape, Marcus goes to visit Carl's grave, where he has a bit of a monologue. This is like really interesting, and one thing I wanted to tell you, and I wasn't sure if you knew about it, is that, you know, after that scene, after you have your monologue, you see Leo. So obviously Leo framed you, and then, you know, he's just there looking at you a little stunned, like, oh my god, like, I wonder if he recognizes you from the news and stuff, like, oh my god, it's him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, what's really interesting is that you decided to endure Leo, which is how you get this ending, but there's a completely different ending, mate. A more interesting one if you actually push Leo. And I only learnt about this after, actually, because I did the same choice as you.
Right.
But if you push Leo and Carl ends up having, you know, his heart attack, and, you know, Leo... Oh, no, Carl doesn't have his heart attack because Leo's the one who ends up injured. You'll go to, not the grave, but Carl's mansion. You'll go back home, essentially. And there's this whole scene where there's this generic android who's serving Carl now. And he asks you to leave, but you break in anyway. And you have a massive yeah, and there's this little hologram thing where Leo's alive, leaves a message and says he's sorry, he's off the drugs. Quite wholesome to see. But then yeah, like you can visit Carl in your in the bed basically, and there's some dialogue you can have, and based off of whether you are pacifist or aggressive, Marcus can either kind of be proud of you, he might be disgusted with you, and then there's some dialogue scenes where you can actually kind of act really angry, and it terrifies Carl, where you could actually kill him because he has a heart attack in bed, or he you watch him die in the hospital bed as the other android comes in and tries to rescue him or whatever. But yeah, just your thoughts on that, mate.
Wow, I mean, that sounds like a far more lengthy scene than what you get at the graveyard, doesn't it? If you've got to break into the mansion, you can talk to him, there's nods. And you know what I think as well is that it must be, if you did choose the more aggressive, rebellious path, you know, it was like, you know, Jericho and stuff, it must be quite gut-wrenching to then have that scene where you then go back to Carl, he's got a different android and he just shuns you because you've become something that he didn't want you to become. So like, it's quite a sad ending considering that had such a good relationship at the start, the potential for it to flip on its head like that. That's really cool, because I thought that graveyard scene would have been there like, regardless. You know, maybe Leo would have just come in with like a bandage around his head or something like that. I don't know. But no, thanks for telling me that, mate.
Yeah, it shows you the level of detail Quantic Dream really put into this game, and it is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, like, we'll end it on the church scene. So essentially Marcus can go around talking to people. In my one I had Connor that you could interact with, but you didn't have that. You had Kara, who you apologized to because you said Jericho was safe. There's a little scene where there's Josh, where you talk about North and how he's really grateful you saved him. Then there's Simon, who mentions that humans are now gathering androids and putting them into concentration camps. So there's always been these parallels of how it, you know, the humans versus androids was very kind of shared parallels with almost like, you know, the fascism story, you know, with like Nazis and Jewish people, for example.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what's happened. There's a genocide going on. So yeah, it just shows you just how bad it's got, and about how androids are basically being reported to be destroyed on site and stuff. At the end, there's a massive speech with Marcus, and you can choose to kind of have kind of like a peaceful demo, or you can have a full-blown revolution. And Jack, for the viewers, what did you pick?
Surprise, surprise! I picked for the revolution, and you know, what's he got to lose at this point? Carl's dead. He's lost his love interest, North. You know what I mean? That he's gone this far now. And to be fair, like, there's, you know what? I'm going to call back to a quote that he said earlier on that I thought was quite telling. And it's Marcus when he says about humans. He says that they have violence in their genes. And you know what? I see a lot in that. You know, there's obviously a lot of good. You know, I don't want to get too bogged down in shitting on humanity, but there is a part of me that thinks that, you know what, humans wouldn't accept androids. There would be people out there that would still subject them to torture, right, killing them, to, you know, committing genocide. So sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire. That was the mindset that I had in that moment. I think with Marcus's story, the way it went, I was thinking, yeah, you know what, I fancy a bit of action. I want to see this typical human versus android thing to come to a head. So yeah, I picked to revolt, mate.
Of course. So it's very interesting, because obviously me being such pacifist, I went for that. I want them to survive. I'm going to play it safe. So I had a lot, probably less entertaining, but more safe playthrough than you did. I chose the pacifist option. But no, that's really interesting. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll cut it there, and then we'll talk about the rest in another chapter, because we are at around the half an hour mark.
Yeah, all right.
But thank you very much, guys, for watching. We hope you enjoyed this penultimate chapter of Detroit Become Human analysis, where Jack spoke about his choices as he's freshly played the game. I say fresh 2 months ago now. But yeah, join us in the very fight. We promise it'll be the final one next one. You know, like, you have my word. And we'll see what Jack does, whether Connor survives, whether Marcus survives, whether Kara survives, if they get through the border. There's so much to find out. Let us in the comments know if you agree with Jack's decisions. Let us know how your kind of game ended up at this point, and let us know if you enjoyed these chapters. Anything from yourself, Jack?
No, not really, mate. Apart from, you know, they're getting spoilt. They're getting a whole extra episode, so enjoy.
Right. Oh, we're just trying to milk the content like Harry Potter and the Hunger Games did.
Yeah.
Give us that YouTube revenue.
But yeah, other than that, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.
I'll see you in the next one, guys. You take care.